Have you ever found yourself in the middle of a crisis, wondering, why is this happening to me? Maybe a relationship ended when you thought it was just beginning. Maybe your career took an unexpected turn, or maybe life simply stopped making sense. Most of us have been there, staring at the ceiling late at night, trying to find answers that seem just out of reach. It's moments like these that make us question everything. Is life just a series of random events? Or is there a deeper thread running through it all? Buddhism offers a perspective that might surprise you. It suggests that what feels chaotic may actually be meaningful, that what feels like a setback may, in time, reveal itself as a turning point. At the core of Buddhist teaching is the idea that everything is interconnected. No experience arises in isolation. Every joy, every sorrow, every detour on our journey is linked to something greater, an unfolding story shaped by karma, impermanence, and cause and effect. This doesn't mean that life becomes predictable or easy, but it does mean that we can begin to see our challenges differently. The Buddha once said, "Nothing ever exists entirely alone. Everything is in relation to everything else." It's a simple idea with profound implications. What if the hard things you've been through weren't punishments, but teachings? What if your current struggle is not the end of something, but the beginning of awakening? In this video, we'll explore how Buddhist wisdom helps us understand the deeper reasons behind life's hardest moments, not in a mystical or fatalistic way, but through the lens of mindfulness, karmic flow, and spiritual growth. Because maybe, just maybe, the question isn't why me, but what am I meant to learn? 1. Karma, cause, and the seeds we plant. When something difficult happens, we often search for someone or something to blame. Ourselves, others, fate, or even the universe. But Buddhism offers a different way of looking at things, one that shifts the focus from blame to understanding. This is where the concept of karma comes in, not as punishment or reward, but as a natural, unfolding process of cause and effect. Imagine every thought, word, and action you make as a seed. Some seeds grow quickly, others take years or even lifetimes to sprout. Karma teaches us that what we experience today is not random. It's the blossoming of seeds we've planted in the past. And just as importantly, the way we respond to today's experiences is planting the seeds of tomorrow. But karma isn't meant to scare us or make us feel powerless. It's quite the opposite. It's a reminder that we always have agency, even in pain. We may not control everything that happens to us, but we do shape how we respond, and those responses ripple outward. Karma is not about blame. It's about clarity. It's about recognizing that every moment holds a choice, and those choices echo into the future. A well-known Buddhist story captures this beautifully. A young monk, devastated after accidentally breaking his master's favorite teacup, expects to be punished, but instead, the master responds with calm and compassion. "The cup was already broken," he says gently. "I just enjoyed it while it lasted." That simple response reveals two profound truths: that everything is impermanent, and that our peace comes not from clinging, but from accepting the flow of cause and effect with grace. So when life feels unfair or out of control, karma reminds us to pause and reflect. What am I planting right now? How can I meet this moment with awareness and intention? Because no matter what has happened before, every present moment is a chance to plant new seeds. Seeds of compassion, patience, wisdom, and peace. 2. The gift of impermanence. If there's one truth that many of us resist, it's this: nothing lasts forever. And yet, that's exactly what Buddhism invites us to understand and ultimately to embrace. Impermanence, or anicca in Pali, is not just a philosophical idea. It's the very nature of existence. Everything we hold dear, relationships, health, youth, success, even our thoughts and emotions, is in a constant state of change. At first, this might sound disheartening. Why invest in anything if it's all going to fade away? But Buddhism teaches us that impermanence is not a reason to despair. It's a doorway to freedom. When we accept that everything is fleeting, we begin to cherish what we have more deeply, and we suffer less when it changes. Think of the seasons. Spring never clings to summer. Autumn doesn't fight the coming of winter. Nature flows, and so must we. When we try to hold on tightly to people, situations, or even identities, we create suffering. But when we release our grip and allow life to unfold, we find peace in the movement itself. A classic example of this is the story of the broken teacup, which we touched on earlier. The master who accepted the cup's fate wasn't cold or indifferent. He simply understood that its beauty was in its temporary nature. That same truth applies to our own lives. The more we resist change, the more we suffer. But when we align with impermanence, we begin to flow with life instead of against it. Impermanence also helps us during times of loss. It doesn't remove the pain, but it offers a deeper perspective. This too shall pass. The grief won't last forever, nor will the storm, nor will the joy. Knowing that everything is temporary can be a source of great compassion, not only for ourselves, but for others. Everyone we meet is carrying something they're afraid to lose. When we remember this, we soften. Ultimately, impermanence teaches us to live fully, not in fear of change, but with reverence for the moment, because it's the fleeting nature of life that makes it precious. 3. Turning suffering into the spark for awakening. In the face of suffering, most of us just want one thing: for it to go away. We resist it, numb it, distract ourselves from it. But Buddhist wisdom gently invites us to pause and ask a deeper question. What if suffering isn't the enemy? What if it's a hidden teacher? Suffering is not something Buddhism ignores or sugarcoats. In fact, it's the very starting point of the Buddha's path to awakening. The first noble truth is clear: dukkha, often translated as suffering, dissatisfaction, or stress, is an inevitable part of life. But here's what's revolutionary. Buddhism doesn't see suffering as a punishment or personal failure. It sees it as a doorway. A Zen story tells of a monk who compares a piece of coal to a diamond. Both come from the same source. But while coal remains dark and soft, the diamond shines, refined through intense pressure. Our hardships, when held with awareness and compassion, have the power to shape us into something wiser, stronger, and more radiant. This doesn't mean that pain becomes pleasant. It doesn't mean we don't cry or grieve. It means we transform our relationship to it. Instead of asking, "How do I make this stop?" we ask, "What is this showing me?" Maybe it's showing us where we're clinging. Maybe it's revealing a deeper fear. Maybe it's calling us to grow. When we stop seeing suffering as a detour and start seeing it as part of the path, we take our power back. We're no longer just surviving, we're awakening. We begin to understand that even in the darkest moments, we're not broken. We're being refined. Like the diamond under pressure, something luminous is emerging from within us. So if you're in pain right now, know this: you are not alone, and you are not off track. This moment, however difficult, is not against you. It's inviting you to slow down, go inward, and find the strength that's already within. Buddhism doesn't promise a life without hardship, but it does promise that every hardship holds within it the seed of awakening. 4 practical tools: mindfulness and meditation. At this point, you might be wondering, how do I actually live this wisdom? How do I carry the truths of karma, impermanence, and transformation into my everyday life? In the middle of traffic, during an argument, or when I'm feeling overwhelmed? The answer is both simple and profound: practice. And in Buddhism, that practice often begins with 2 essential tools: mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness is the art of being fully present, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. It means bringing your attention to the here and now without judgment. Whether you're washing dishes, walking in the park, or speaking to a loved one, mindfulness invites you to truly be there. Not lost in the past, not anxious about the future, but grounded in this breath, this moment. Meditation is the training ground for that presence. It's not about escaping life or stopping your thoughts. It's about sitting with yourself, just as you are, and watching your mind with compassion. Maybe you focus on your breath, maybe you repeat a mantra, maybe you simply notice the sensations in your body. With each session, you strengthen your ability to return to stillness, to pause before reacting, to witness your experience with clarity. Over time, something subtle but powerful begins to shift. You stop getting pulled under by every wave of emotion. You start seeing your patterns more clearly, and most importantly, you begin to respond to life, not from fear or habit, but from a place of wisdom and intention. Mindfulness and meditation don't erase suffering, but they change how we relate to it. They create space between stimulus and response, between thought and reaction. And in that space, we find freedom. You don't need hours a day to start. Just 5 minutes of quiet breathing, a mindful walk, a pause before you speak. These small practices are like drops of water, gentle, but over time, they shape stone. They help us integrate Buddhist wisdom not just as a belief system, but as a lived experience, because true peace doesn't come from changing your entire life. It comes from changing how you show up to each moment of it. 5. Living ethically, aligning actions with wisdom. Wisdom without action is like a lamp with no flame. It holds potential, but it doesn't yet light the way. In Buddhism, the heart of practice is not just how we sit in meditation, but how we live, moment to moment, choice by choice. That's why ethical living is not separate from spiritual growth. It is spiritual growth in motion. Buddhist ethics are grounded in the understanding that everything we do affects not just ourselves, but the entire web of life. Through the lens of karma and interconnectedness, our choices are never isolated. A word spoken in anger doesn't just end with us. It ripples. A small act of kindness doesn't just brighten someone's day. It plants a seed that could bloom in ways we'll never see. The 5 precepts, guidelines that form the foundation of ethical living in Buddhism, are not rigid commandments, but compassionate commitments to refrain from harming, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, and intoxicants that cloud the mind. These aren't rules for perfection. They're reminders. They help us stay awake to our intentions and to the impact of our actions. Living ethically is about alignment. When our actions align with the truths we've come to understand, impermanence, karma, and compassion, we begin to live with more ease. There's less inner conflict, more clarity, more peace. We stop chasing things that don't nourish us, and we start making choices that reflect the kind of person we're becoming. In daily life, ethical living can look like speaking truthfully, even when it's uncomfortable. It can look like pausing before reacting, or choosing to buy something sustainable out of care for the earth. It might mean walking away from gossip, or showing compassion to someone who's struggling, even if they never say thank you. These actions may seem small, but over time, they shape your character. They build trust within yourself and with the world. And when life gets hard, that inner foundation becomes a source of strength. Ethical living is not about being morally superior. It's about being deeply connected to the consequences of your life. It's about planting seeds of goodness, not just because it's right, but because it feels natural, because it brings harmony, because it reflects the kind of peace we're all seeking. 6. Trusting the journey, acceptance and surrender. There's a quiet strength that arises when we stop trying to control everything. It's not resignation, it's not giving up. It's something deeper, something softer, and yet more powerful. In Buddhism, this is the wisdom of surrender. We live in a world that teaches us to strive, to fix, to achieve. So when life doesn't go our way, we tighten our grip, we resist, we try to force a different outcome. But as the Zen proverb goes, let go or be dragged. When we fight what is, we suffer. When we soften into what is, we begin to find peace. Surrender in Buddhism is not passive, it's deeply conscious. It means accepting the reality of this moment without denial, without judgment. It's saying, this is what's here. I may not understand it yet, I may not like it, but I trust that I can meet it with awareness. That trust is radical, and it changes everything. This kind of surrender is built on two foundations: impermanence and interconnectedness. When we understand that everything changes, we stop expecting things to stay the same. When we understand that all things are connected, we begin to see that what looks like an ending may actually be the beginning of something unseen. Acceptance doesn't mean we stop caring or stop acting. It means we stop resisting reality. And that frees up our energy, not to fight life, but to flow with it. When something unexpected happens, we can ask, what is this moment asking of me? Instead of closing, we open. Instead of clinging, we breathe. And that openness becomes the ground for resilience. In relationships, surrender looks like letting go of the need to control others. In loss, it means grieving fully, without needing answers. In change, it's the ability to ride the wave, trusting that the ocean beneath you is wide enough to hold it all. And in all of it, there's a quiet trust that this journey, even when confusing or painful, is taking us somewhere meaningful. We don't have to see the whole path. We just have to keep walking, with presence, with humility, and with an open heart. And now we return to the question we began with: why is this happening to me? After exploring the wisdom of karma, impermanence, mindfulness, ethics, and surrender, perhaps we can begin to see that this question isn't one of blame, but of meaning. From a Buddhist perspective, nothing in life is wasted. Every moment, even the painful ones, is part of a vast, unfolding process, a web of causes and conditions shaping who we are and who we're becoming. Every joy reveals what we value. Every sorrow reveals what we cling to. Every setback reveals our capacity to rise again. In this way, nothing is random, nothing is without purpose, and nothing is separate from the path. So when something difficult comes your way, pause, breathe. Instead of reacting, ask, what is this teaching me? You may not get an answer right away, but in that pause, you'll find space. And in that space, you'll find presence. And from presence, wisdom always begins to grow. Life will never be without challenge. But through Buddhist teachings, we learn to meet those challenges with mindfulness instead of panic, with compassion instead of judgment, with trust instead of fear. We stop asking the universe to change and start letting the moment change us. Remember, every experience, no matter how small or difficult, is part of your spiritual evolution. It's a thread in the great tapestry of your life, and though you may not yet see the full design, it is being woven with care, with purpose, and with infinite potential. So walk gently, stay curious, live mindfully, and trust that everything, even this, is part of your path to awakening. Thank you for being here with us today. If this message spoke to your heart, please consider subscribing to Light of Buddhism, sharing this video with someone who may need it, and continuing this journey of inner peace, compassion, and spiritual discovery. Until next time, may you walk with awareness, breathe with kindness, and know that you are exactly where you need to be.